afternoon, everyone. My name is Linda Golick. I'm the Health and Wellbeing Consultant at Bellin Health, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for another segment of our Mental Health Moment series. So we have a really great treat for you today. So this month's topic, in connection to our Lifesaver Wellbeing series, is myth versus fact. And we teased this last month, how we wanted to jump into the topic of this idea that sometimes we get under the myth that athletes are somehow superhuman and they may not have the struggles that the rest of us may have. And when we were talking about doing this topic, we certainly had no idea that some of the current news that has unfolded would unfold. So we are excited to really dive into that topic today and have a great discussion. So I have three very special people with me today to help have this discussion, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves and talk about their connection to this topic. So, of course, we will start with our very own Charles Latour, our behavioral health therapist. So, Charles, if you could share with us a little bit more, because you really have an expertise when it comes to the psychology of athletes. So tell us more about that.
Sure. Well, first of all, being a therapist, obviously my heart and profession are always close to the mental health world, how people are doing. I feel like I spend half my day and half my life somewhat like the Capital One commercial that's always asking what's in your wallet. I'm always asking what's on your mind, like what's going on there at your best and at the times where you don't feel that. The quality of our mind is always determining and impacting and influencing the quality of our performance and, in fact, the quality of our lives. So as a clinician, that's always something that I'm looking at, interested in talking with people all day about. Taking it a little bit more nuanced into this element of sports performance, one of the other things I do at Bellin is working with local athletes on their performance, whether it's running, swimming, golfing, volleyball, basketball, whatever it is, helping people in their chosen sport determine what is possible for them, understanding what is possible, and then understanding what obstacles might be in the way so we can reach all that is possible in their performance. So because of those two things and this topic and how timely it is, I'm awfully happy that we are talking about this today. It's actually fantastic.
Great. Thanks for telling us about that, Charles. I think that's so great because you're going to really bring an extra element of your perspective to this discussion. So next, I want to introduce Roland Schmidt, and Roland Schmidt is one of our athletic trainers. But Roland, tell us a little bit of your connection.
Yeah, so as you said, I am an athletic trainer here at Bellin. I've been with Bellin for 20 years this July, so I did a little anniversary on my end here. I've been primarily in the high school outreach setting here with Bellin Health, but even prior to that, I worked with Division III college at North Park University prior to coming to Bellin, and even before that, I worked with the U.S. speed skating team, actually fresh out of when I graduated college, and was fortunate enough to travel around the world with elite caliber athletes. And working with them. So quite a background within the athletic world and working hand in hand, side by side with athletes from the injury standpoint, but also, as we know, the injury standpoint also leads to the mental standpoint of things as well. So really strong direct correlation as to how one affects the other.
Absolutely, and I love how this is coming together with these dimensions of well-being, the physical affecting the mental and vice versa, and we're really going to illustrate that today. Thank you so much. And Dina, if you could share with us your connection.
Okay, my name's Dina Brown. I'm the team leader of Bellin Health Riverside and our Lakeshore area. Charles had asked me to join this call today. My husband and I are coming going into our 9th year of hosting Green Bay Gambler hockey players, and we're just coming out of our 5th year hosting Green Bay Bullfrog / Booyah players. he thought I could give a little insight on what it's like to live with athletes, what happens at home around the dinner table. The one nice thing about it is it makes going to games a lot more interesting because you have people to cheer on. But we always say the highs are really high and the lows can be really low, and we try to help the players through the low part.
Okay, great. What a great connection you have then to some of these athletes and maybe some of what they're experiencing. So great to have all of you with us to join in this discussion. So let's start off with, we're just coming off of the Olympics. I don't know about you guys. I love watching the Olympics. I'm always blown away by the ability of these folks. And I, in particular, have always enjoyed the gymnastics. And it's amazing to me the things that these gymnasts are able to do. And of course, we heard a lot in the news about Simone Biles. She decided to take herself out of the competition because she wasn't feeling quite right. And I think that really put that spotlight on the mental health of athletes, and we heard how Michael Phelps was talking to her. And even when we look at our very own Aaron Rodgers and hearing how he had worked on his mental health in the off season. So I just want to start the discussion there and hear what you all have to think, what you think about what has been going on really from a global perspective with some of these athletes. So Charles, why don't we kick it off with you?
Sure. The global element of this is, I think, in a way, a really positive thing, to be perfectly frank. I think we have fairly to dearly sobering statistics about athletes and mental health, to the extent that we know that some studies tell us as much as 25% of college athletes experience a mental health related issue. And even more unfortunately, some studies tell us as many as 80 to 90% don't seek treatment because of the stigma around mental health and getting help for it, that we should be able to tough this through. So that is one of the reasons I thought this would be a great topic, because of the myth versus fact that not every athlete's trajectory is, I was an amazingly gifted, talented athlete, and I worked and I just kept getting better. I made the pros, or I made the Olympics, or I did whatever. Oftentimes, the road to that success can be paved with incredible, difficult experiences. And when we look at the Olympics, and you look at the pressure, you look at the stress, you look at the fatigue, you look at the travel, and in this case, you look at all of these athletes have been working for 4 years to maybe do a 3-minute to 10-minute event in which they get ready to go up and do this flip or somersault, all these other things they do, and then land ideally in this stuck hip position. And it took 5 years to do that. And the pressure and stress of that we think that's just that they're superhuman, they just do that. I think what we got to find out in these last several weeks is that none of us are superhuman. I was having a discussion with a client earlier, and who had been experiencing similar things, was saying, wow, just seeing what these athletes did, whether it was Simone Biles, Carrie Seidel, Michael Phelps, Aaron Rodgers, the list goes on, and some of the people in the Induction Hall of Fame this week, and we saw Ryan Leaf, who was a very troubled professional athlete, in and out of treatment, as well as jail, and is now one of the biggest proponents, someone supporting this push to have athletes not necessarily as superhumans, but as humans who deal with the same things, the same stressors, the same pressures that we do day in and day out. And it's finally getting the reckoning and understanding that it deserves. And I want to say one other thing that I thought during the Olympics was a particular ongoing theme that I loved, which was there was this one commercial I believe, I won't even say what the product was I was going to, but I'll hold off on the product. But it was an individual having a dream of what athletics and Olympics might look like in the future. And one of the dreams was that my mental health would be as accepted as the rest of me. And that I think if we can get to that place, and we've been talking about this for a year and a half, that we are not just physically healthy if we're physically healthy, we are physically healthy if it's in our heart, soul, and our mind, not just from the neck down. So mental health is part of our health, and we don't have overall well-being without our mental health. And I think if nothing else, these last several weeks brought that front and center to the world. So I will pause on that note. There's more I want to say, but we could get to it later. But I really want to hear Dina and Roland and their perspectives as well.
Charles, I think you brought up a couple great points in that. We talk about our athletes being superhuman. We talk about a mental toughness that we expect of our athletes, that these athletes think that they have to have this mental toughness, that I have to have this suck it up type attitude. And we hear that continuously in our world within athletics. And I think it's something that we need to be cognizant of and maybe, do a little self-check as we think about our athletes. In preparation for this conversation, we talked previously about Simone Biles and whether the twisties that she had, was that a physical ailment or was that a mental ailment? And as we all know, those are combined. Those are one and the same. If I'm not mentally prepared to perform, then I'm not physically able to perform. And it is one and the same that these athletes have to be mentally capable of doing the skills that they're able to do. Working through injuries with our athletes that we work through, coming back from an ACL tear for some of our student athletes, if they don't feel comfortable that they can cut and pivot and jump, well, they're not going to be able to go back to football. They're not going to be able to go back to basketball or soccer or whatever their chosen sport may be. And I think it's really important that we need to understand that physical ailment that we may be seeing is just the same as that mental ailment that student athlete or that athlete may be going through as well. And the second point of the comment you made as well, Charles, is that you talked about the path that these athletes take to get to greatness. I said I had the pleasure of working with the U.S. speed skating team many years ago, and the stressors that they go under, although they may be a gold medalist at the end of this all, remember those folks that were unable to capture that great moment. You think about folks like Dan Jansen. You talk about that split second in time. He's a 500-meter skater who slipped twice in two separate Olympics, and his dream was gone like that. To be able to perform with the pressures that he had, and dealing with the death of a family member during that, if you recall that from way back when, dating myself on my age here with that a little bit, but you think about the pressures that he had going into that, and as he talked about those moments afterward, he said, I wasn't in the right place mentally, and I wasn't focused on my event. I wasn't focused on those, few seconds in a 500-meter race, and he was out just like that. And then the final point that you made, Charles, is that these athletes have the same pressures that we do. As I said, I was lucky enough to work with the U.S. speed skating team, and their concerns were just like mine at the time. Graduating college, and boy, oh boy, can I pay for my tuition, and where's my next meal going to come from? Because boy, oh boy, I'm flat broke. And these are not, most of our high-end athletes, other than maybe our professional athletes, even our minor leagues and things like that, these athletes don't have unlimited income. They do have the same stresses that we do. What happens when my car breaks down? They talked about those same issues, those same problems with me, that I was dealing with, as a new graduate. So yeah, we're not all that different than those folks that we see on TV.
Yeah, we have it where like after a game, if something goes wrong and one of our boys have a bad game, I always try to find something positive that they did during the game to kind of lift their spirits. But some of these kids that stay in our house, just the pressure, they were great in the league they were in before, and then they come here and they're with a bunch of really, really good players. And sometimes that gets them down. Sometimes because there are so many great players, they have to sit a game and they just don't understand how to process that. I never sat in the league I was in before this. Why are they sitting me now? It's stuff through the years we've learned and got tools to help these players with.
So Charles, we had talked before this session, and you had some really great data because we were really discussing, well, what is it about athletics and why are people into athletics? What do they get from it? Why does it bring us in? Why are we so drawn to it? The people that both participate and then us as spectators. What is it about that?
Yeah, there's some interesting, if you really think about it, athletics is really a great thing. Really, at the end of the day, it's hopefully fun for people. It's competitive. There's life lessons learned, and every time you go out and do something, even if we take the Olympics, if you really think about the Olympics and part of what we're talking about, and even on the road to the Olympics, participating at the highest level, wherever you are to get to the next one, and then ultimately one that you may never even go beyond. If you think of that from the vantage point of what is that doing for me? What am I learning? How am I growing? How do I keep getting better? Anytime we are in the process of getting better, there's growth, right? There's learning, there's growth taking place, and hopefully we're healthier. Hopefully we're physically healthier, and we're enjoying it. And we want people to be physically healthy. We want people to be best mind, best body, so forth, right? But think of it where this starts. Parents with younger kids, put them in sports, the kids running around, maybe they're gravitating to soccer, maybe it's t-ball, maybe it's basketball, maybe it's gymnastics. We have gymnastics. These kids look like they can barely walk, but they're doing all these other things, right? So, and what we know is that there's so much pressure and stress that they're going through along the way that by 13, roughly 2/3, between 70 and 78% say that's it. I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. For whatever reason, maybe I didn't think I liked it. Maybe I didn't think I did well. Maybe I thought my parents pressured me. Maybe I didn't like my teammates. Maybe I didn't like the sport. But by 13, there's so much pressure and stress that I'm done. And then the rest have these other areas of pressure and stress. And you take that all the way through high school, which hopefully we'll talk more about because there's so much there locally and beyond. But take it all the way to the Olympics and maybe a Simone Biles and a pressure and stress of the weight of gold on your shoulders with the entire world watching you carry that weight around. That's a pressure and a stressor that maybe none of us would ever know. And I got to be honest with you, I was a little bit surprised and a little bit irked of the criticism she got for what she did. And I don't look at it that she wasn't mentally tough to pull out what she did. And I'm going to say, actually, it was the opposite. I think she showed incredible toughness to be able to identify that, what Michael Phelps has been saying, which is it's okay to not be okay. If there's a time when you don't feel ready, there's no one else who could determine that but you. And part of, I think, and hopefully one of the takeaway lessons from this is that in the grand scheme of what toughness is, it isn't that we tough through and grit our teeth and get tough through everything that we face, but sometimes the real toughness that we have comes out from having the psychological awareness and insight and personal space to be able to say, you know what, right now I have a choice. And my choice is to do what is best, right, and healthiest for me. And no one else can do that for me. And under the pressure and under the stress and under, let's even say, the extreme fatigue that she may have been going through, I don't know how we can second guess that opinion. I actually think we should applaud it, because that was true toughness, to be able to say that with all of that pressure and the world watching it at the same time. There's other examples of it, but that is the most visual that most people have from the takeaway of this. So that's some of what I think about the experience of what we were able to see, and hopefully what we can glean from it and make hopefully it's a stepping stone for all of us to be stronger in that respect.
We see it a lot, and we saw it a couple years back. There was a hockey player, had a college scholarship, was drafted into the NHL, but he did not want to play hockey anymore. He was miserable. And one day he just walked into the coach's office, said, I'm done with hockey. I'm playing for everybody else but for myself. And then the player we had at the time came home and was telling us the story. And he said, you know, when that kid came out of the office, the weight of the world was off his shoulders. He was laughing. He was just so glad that he made that decision to walk away. And I'm sure that didn't come lightly to that child or young man, I should say. But we do see a lot of the parents putting pressure on their kids. You need to go into the coach and get more playing time. Why are they sitting you? Why didn't they let you pitch more innings? You know, why did they pull you right away? And sometimes the pressure the parents put on the kids is more than they can handle. And they should just be going out there to enjoy what they're doing.
I think that's a great point that you bring up, Dina. As parents, you know, I have 3 children of my own that were all very athletic and, you know, enjoyed the game and really being able to see both sides of athletics, you know, the underbelly of what I do within athletics in the daily world. And then also seeing as a parent, how do I need to balance those things was really an eye opener for me. So that was something I really tried to tread lightly on over my kid's career. I have a senior who's just finishing up his senior year this year. And to your point, that the pressures that I see other families putting on their children, boy, I need you to earn this college scholarship, or we don't know how you're going to go to school. I don't know how we're going to be able, you know, boy, you really have the weight of your team on your shoulders, and your state hopes are, banking on you being the leading player this year. And those types of pressures, even at the high school level that I see, are really, you know, troubling for me to watch and listen to. And as I listen to some of these coaches and parents put these pressures on student athletes, I have to reel myself back and say, gosh, I hope I'm not doing that with my own children first and foremost. But more than anything, how can I help those kids that are under those stresses and under those pressures, and be that support person for them, you know, a neutral ear instead of, you know, the coach hat or the parent hat or the whatever hat. So I think it's important that within my role as an athletic trainer, I'm able to witness this and see this, but yet still try to help them as much as I can, when I can, where I can. But again, I think just that awareness, to your point, that I see more often than not, and unfortunately so, kids that started as, you know, 8th, 9th grade kids loving a sport of insert sport, basketball, football, baseball, name it, quit by their senior year. because there's just so much pressure on them, and so many expectations for them, to be dedicated to that one sport or the star player in that sport. So it is a little bit troubling as I watch some of that take place.
And you make a good point. We're actually the neutral party at our house. We're not the parent and we're not the coach. So we can we really, really try to be the neutral party, and like if they're down on themselves, just keep trying to talk them up and not let it all the pressure from both sides weigh down on them.
That's such a great point, Dina. If I can, I'd like to double click on what you were saying and what Roland was saying, and just and say a little bit more with this. The Simone Biles part, and that whole realm is the pressure at that level is, I think, like 3 different notches when you look at it. It's you're already thought of as the GOAT, right? You're the greatest of all time. Carrying that around in and of itself is a lot. You get to prove it every 4 years, which is a lot of anticipatory stress going on along the way, right? And then there's when am I going to do when I do it? And then whatever I do, especially if it doesn't work out, the pressure of going for gold, carrying the gold, nothing less than gold works for us anymore. There's now exceptional is the baseline rather than greatness. So there's all of that, and the price of gold in this case is to be armchair analyzed by every Monday morning psychologist, shrink, psychotherapist in the world, and has to go through that, right? But that's at that level. Think of locally, a high schooler, basketball game, right? When I played, you're down a point, you're shooting a 1-and-1, and there's 2 seconds left. So you're at the free throw line, and maybe the pressure, the noise, and the stress going through your head is, oh, I hope I make this, otherwise we lose, right? Coach will be upset, team will be upset. So that's the pressure of that free throw. Today, the pressure of that free throw is, first, there's bunches of people, tons of people waving the big hands with the 1 on it, the finger out there. There's people yelling, you're going to choke, air ball. They're going to be yelling everything. But then there's the thought, I will live in Instagram, social media, Facebook, Snapchat, group text infamy if I miss this. The whole world will know, that scholarship will be gone, the scouts will leave, they won't contact me. Forget D1, I won't even get D3. There's all of that pressure on that. And then the idea that even worse, hey, my grandkids may see this digitally in 20 years, that grandpa missed the free throw that would have won the game. That's so much different. Social media and these other pressures have changed the game, literally and figuratively, completely, and turned it totally upside down. And all of that noise going through these athletes' head is completely amplified to the 10th decibel level, comparatively speaking, to a time before that. So that is the pressure, the stress, and why so many people say, you know what, I don't want to do it, and why the person Dina was talking about felt that incredible relief, because the weight of the world on your shoulders is now taken off rather than put even more squarely on there. And part of what we're trying to do in our program is help manage all that more effectively, so you can get the most authentically positive performance out of your sport and what you do, rather than what you're carrying around between your ears. So that's what I wanted to say. So thanks for giving me a chance to double click on those comments.
So I think now I just want to, kind of transition to, I think we've built that awareness to really know that this is going on. How do we help? So from each of your perspectives, You know, how do I, average person, maybe a spectator, maybe a parent, maybe a family member of an athlete, what can I do? What can I do? What can we offer for these folks to offer them that mental health support so that they don't feel the pressure and that it doesn't affect them so deeply? What are your thoughts on how we can help?
I'm going to jump in right away with the direct follow-up to Charles' statement. Don't be that person. Don't be that person jumping on Twitter, and don't be that person jumping on Instagram and whatever else saying, little Johnny, 16-year-old little Johnny missed the free throw to lose the game. You know, start there. Start with that. I think it's very easy for all of us to put the phone away for a few minutes and not do that. If I'm the mom or the dad, you know, support that person through their successes and not belittle them for the things that they did. Again, in my role, I have the privilege of being able to be a confidant to a lot of kids in a really, you know, tight-knit group. And the ability to be able to just be an ear to them, to be a decent human being for them, to have somebody to talk to, without real pressures of that conversation, without me judging them based on what their feelings may be, I think is something that we can all do very easily with very little training to just be a decent human being. And I think it starts with just being able to listen, understanding first and foremost the pressures that these student athletes, college athletes, pro athletes are going through. And then being able to listen to them and having some empathy for them.
Yeah, can I jump in on that, Roland? Thank you for those great comments. So I want to say a couple things, and I want to do it in reference to what you're saying and how we can all do it, but maybe from a coaching and parent perspective as well. And then Dina, I think, has walked this talk from that neutral part probably as well as anybody, which is one of the reasons I was so happy she was going to be on this. So I'll be particularly interested in what you think of this, Dina. But kind of the starting point is listening, right? Whether you're a coach, parent, listening to what your child or your student athlete is going through. Unless you really can understand their experience, whether it's their joy or their pain, they're going to think you're not connected. So the only way to connect is to invite the conversation, but that you want to hear rather than tell. When it's all telling rather than hearing, you're not learning and growing from them. You're just dispensing information, which they're already getting probably from every angle anyway, right? So you have to listen. Secondly, the student athlete has to know that they are not their sport. Their identity is not their sport. Their identity is Joe Smith, Jill Smith, whoever they are. It isn't their sport, and it isn't their score in their sport or their statistics in their sport. It isn't how fast they ran the 100 or swam the butterfly or their last free throw or their last golf score. You're not a 72. You are who you are. So helping them, and the parents to help them know that I'm not going to critique you if you miss that shot. I'm going to support you. I'm going to help you learn and grow from whatever you're doing. So I like to instill this good, better, best mentality in the parent conversation. What did you like that was good about what you did? What do you think you can utilize to help you be even better in your practice? And then one thing that will help you continue on your road to being the best. So it's analytical, it's helpful and supportive, because parents will tell me, so I'm just supposed to tell him he did great even when he missed every shot? No, I'm not necessarily saying that either. But if it's all they're going to get is a critique, then they're not going to want to have that conversation. They don't even want to look forward to the ride home with you if that's what they're going to get. And the last thing I'm going to say is one of the things I work with athletes the most is be able to, and some of what we've talked about is be able to stay in the moment. You can't win the point 10 minutes ago. You can't win the points 10 minutes from now. You could only win in the space that you're in. You could only win this moment. So being able to stay in the moment, let go of the past, don't worry too much about the future, stay in the moment, right? But if that student athlete sees their parent on the sideline still yelling at a ref from 10 minutes ago, and then going on, or the coach, it's harder for them to do that if they see that their parents can't do that either. So part of it is being able to help in that support. And what I always tell parents is that there's a fine line between pressure and support. But if you start with listening, to intentionally want to understand rather than just impart knowledge of your own, you're going to be in a better place. And if you could instill the identity that they're your child rather than the commodity or the sport that they're in, they're going to feel more safe in having that discussion emotionally. And as a result, they're going to share more with you like they might to a neutral party like Dina in the space that she's in, which is why I want to hear more, Dina, what you have to say about that in your experience.
Well, I want to kind of go back to what Roland said, like, what can you do in the stands? Don't tell these kids don't scream at these kids, they stink. Don't boo them. Don't boo their coach. Their coaches can only coach. They're not on the ice trying to make the plays. Because if you're booing their coach, you're essentially booing them. And it's just mind-boggling the stuff people in the stands will yell at these kids, and they're just playing a game. And it's really hard to watch and keep your mouth shut and not try to defend them. But yeah, like these kids, like I've had kids come home and they're like, I didn't throw at 92 miles an hour. I didn't, I walked too many people and I was pulled, or they hit too many balls off me. And then I had an opposite experience where one of our pitchers' kid clobbered the ball. I'm like, it was a home run to a home run. And we just kind of asked him, well, how did you feel after that guy hit such a big home run off you? He goes, that's it. He really hit that ball out of the park. Wasn't that cool? Did you see how far it made it? And it's just, just all the different emotions of these kids, and you just got to kind of help them through it. But yeah, that one kid that was really impressed with that home run, that just tickled me, because any other pitcher we had in our house, they would have been sad for like a week. So, you just got to remember, these are kids playing a game, and they don't need you booing, they don't need you cursing, and they don't need you screaming at them. I'm sure they know the mistake they made, and they don't need you to remind them of it. They want to move to the next play and try to make a better play.
Now, let me say one last quick thing. Thank you for that, Dina. The thing about that positioning, where we are in time, future versus past, and staying in the moment. One thing that I really like more than anything else is this idea that once you're there, and kind of rounding out this part of what can we do, once you're there, if you're telling your kid what to do, that isn't giving them confidence. Helping them be confident is, look, whatever you're going to do, you can't train anymore now. Now is the time to just go and do it. So I'm not even going to try to overburden you or inundate you with comments or whatever right now. Just go and play. And there is no greater message a parent can give to their student athlete than the message of, you know what? At the end of the day, the main thing I really love doing is just watching you play. Because I will tell you this, as a parent whose child, his career has already come and gone, once that is done, there is nothing you will miss more. So enjoy it, want to enjoy it, appreciate them, and take that opportunity to take it in, because when it's gone, you'll miss nothing more. So that's what I would encourage parents to do more than anything else.
Beautiful. And so we're just kind of running out of time here. I would love to keep this discussion going. I feel like there's so much more to say, but if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and we'll get to your questions, and we'll kind of wrap up here. So somebody's asking, what about the teammates that pressure them? Any feedback from you all on that?
One of the things that I see with teammates, it really is about building a culture, and that starts with the staff and the coaches and those around them. That happens less when the culture is different. When the culture is understood, that's something we don't do. That's something we don't. We're all in this together. This is not a he said, she said, you lost, we lost. It's a we thing in a team situation. So I think the culture assists with the pressures that may or may not be put on student athletes.
Ina, you want to say anything?
I have to agree with that, because like with this year with COVID, some of these sports teams, they could only be in small groups. And you can really tell this year's team versus other teams, because they were really cliquey, and only these 4 people would do stuff, or these 4, but it was never a group. And I think sometimes that's worse than anything else.
Yeah, I think the culture and what it's like, and I think coaches have a lot to do with that mentality. But I always look at a team as a group of people whose arms are locked to address whatever adversity they're going to face and go and do it. And sometimes that's an easy thing to say that we're going to do, but sometimes in the face of adversity, we just kind of take care of ourselves. But when we learn that staying locked together and go through it, if you're criticizing Joe Smith, you're criticizing me too. Just like criticizing the coach is criticizing me. When we have locked arms and we're all in this together, none of us is stronger than all of us. And if we could perpetuate that culture of strength and that we're all in this together and we're all better because of it, we're at a better place. And that's one of the things we do in this program, is help teams and organizations reach that cultural level, that there's strength in numbers rather than just how good each individual is. So creating that culture that is all about not just winning, but being our best together. And that as teammates, coaches, parents, we all play a role in instilling that rather than working against it.
And I even think that this translates, even if you're with us today and you're listening to this and you're not necessarily connected to athletics in some way, shape, or form, I think this is still such a valuable discussion, because we talked about that these people are not just the activity they're involved in, right? And I think that applies to all of us. We can look at ourselves and know that we are more than what our job is. We're more than what our obligations in life are. We have value beyond that just because we are human beings. So I think that's just something to kind of keep in mind as well. So I just want to get some closing comments from each one of you as we wrap up today. I think we've covered the questions, but just any kind of parting thoughts that you want to share with us on this topic as we send people out, maybe with some further thought on all of this discussion. So Roland, how about I start with you?
Thanks. First off, thank you to everybody on today. I think it's really important that we're able to get this message out. It helps dispel the stigma of mental health and some of the things that are out there with our students. A great study was just recently done with a colleague, an athletic training colleague of mine who was down at UW Health down in the Madison area, and talked about student athletes and depression and stress of those that are missing their athletics because of COVID or due to COVID. And Charles, you referenced it as far as being able to be a team together, and what was surprising about that is even the individual athletes, the individual sport athletes, the tennis players, the golfers, their identity was taken from them. So we need to be very cognizant, especially in today's time and age of COVID and all of these things that are going on, that not only are we really looking out for the team and the team aspect of things, but each individual, especially these young adults that again, in my world that I deal with on a daily basis, our sons, our daughters, that, from our listeners that are on the call today, I think that's important that we are listening to those fears and concerns. It was a very eye-opening number that many of these kids had significant depression and even suicidal thoughts because of their loss of their athletics and things to that nature. So if we're able to listen, if we're able to be a great human being, I think it's really important that we continue to do that in our daily life, and as we talk about athletics here.
Thank you, Roland. Just really great information. So appreciate you being here with us today. Dina, any closing thoughts from you today?
I just want to say thank you for including me today. I would just say, like Roland said, be kind. Remember, these are just kids, and just try to build them up and not knock them down.
Absolutely. Perfectly said. And Charles, what are your parting thoughts today?
Just a couple that I'd like to leave everybody with. The first one is I'm going to read a quote from Molly Seidel. For those who may not have followed the Olympics, she is the American distance runner who won the bronze in the women's marathon, right from Wisconsin, a great Wisconsin person, had a great wrap-up line to her family. But when she was asked about this whole experience, what she has said was that, what's the smartest thing that you can do for your success? And she says, there's a very old school idea of this stiff upper lip that says you can do anything you set your mind to. But no, I appreciate that we are becoming a lot more nuanced now with seeing that mental health is physical health. They are directly correlated. So this is in keeping with the theme that we've had for the last year and a half. This all goes together. The other thing that I want to say about this highest level of competition is that at the fiercest, highest level of competition, which is the Olympics, this is the place where, let's not forget, most records are set when they're at the Olympics. So we can still access the best of who we are at that. But what I've always been amazed about ever since I was a little kid was that that's those 5 rings of it. It wasn't just the sport and the process, but how 5 different continents can come together. The world, in fact, comes together, and that the fiercest competitive sports can bring about our greatest angels and bring us all together to have that kindness, that compassion, that support, that humanness that we all need, despite the athletic events that we are going through. And I think at the end of the day, to me, that was one of the most resounding messages, and that it's okay not to be okay, and that taking care of yourself is not a weakness, but a strength. And then the last thing I want to say is that here at Bellin, our work at doing that with local athletes continues, and that if anybody has any interest in that, and it doesn't have to be specifically for athletics, because as Linda was saying, your best performance doesn't necessarily have to be in a sport. It could be at a piano recital. It could be at a dance recital. It could be at your work. It could be at a speech. It could be at a play, a stage performance. Being your best and seeking the way to become that doesn't have to be an athletic endeavor to aid your performance. And if anybody wants any more on it, the number is 920-431-5600. And I hope everybody out there has a chance to go out and be their best at whatever it is that lights you up in life.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Charles. What a great discussion. Thank you so much to the 3 of you, Roland, Dina, Charles. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing to support athletes and beyond, and really bring all that kindness and grace to those folks. And I think you set a great example on how we can all move forward and treat people in that same way. So thank you to the three of you for taking the time today. Thank you to our audience for listening in. We will be sending out this recording, and reach out to us with any questions. Otherwise, have a great rest of the day. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.